Hey, good morning. Welcome to Real Life Guitars. Sam here. I've got somebody scratching to get in the shed, but anyway. Yeah, today's guitar is, I'm just cleaning my board a minute. Today's guitar is a beautiful budget guitar that I bought from a local seller down here. Just knocked my cleverly laid pile of frets. Oh god. Right, this is not good. That isn't good at all. Hold on a second. I've got my little fret flypaper game going on here, and I've brilliantly managed to toss one of the frets onto the floor. So that's why I'm here. I'm going to try, and I think in vain is probably, yeah, I think it's going to be a hopeless task at the moment. Let's just put this somewhere else. I'm going to have to come back and attend to these frets because I've now lost one of them in the anyway. They weren't important for now. So yeah, I bought this guitar from a local seller who trades in really nice guitars, and normally they're the big brand names, and this is one of the few-ish that he's had through. And as soon as I saw it, I just loved it. You know, it's such a pretty Les Paul copy. You can see it's got these fabulous abalone inlays and so on, but it's a Westfield, and I've done a couple of those, and I really like the quality of these. And it's a full weight Les Paul copy. And you can see here with a set neck, hardly a mark on it. There's a tiny little ding there. So it's in really nice condition, and it has a nice playing action, pretty nice playing action already, with, I suppose, hardly any fret wear at all. So everything about this guitar is really nice to begin with. Sound of trees scratching their leaves on their branches on the roof. So yeah, this is a guitar that I bought mainly to set up and sell on fairly quickly, what with it being Christmas and everything, but I've got this horrible feeling that I'm going to become attached to it in fairly short order. Not an awful lot is known about Westfields as far as I can find out. They're a Chinese made brand, but they had a distribution base in Scotland apparently, and they traded for a few years and then went out of business. And I think the warehouse got sold on to some pretty canny people who got in there quick, so the world was then full of Westfields being bought and sold second hand. But everything about this is lovely, and you know, it's a great weight, and it has superb sort of resonance. You can hear the sustain on it. It's very nice. Gold hardware, which is in good condition, hardly even faded actually. So today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit of tweaking to get the action how I want it, whilst exploring, you know, looking up close and seeing what, you know, if there are any issues at all that I need to try and take care of. But like I said, this is a really nice guitar, and I think it was the top of the Westfield Les Paul copy range. There are some other ones out there which are straightforward, and it has mini pots in it, which I'm just going to take off these covers anyway, and let's see what the inside look like. But you know, reviews online point out this is a it's a very nice, highly spec'd beastie for the money, and I, just having had a very quick play of it, I've no reason to doubt it. I'm also going to be interested to see how little or much adjustment it's going to take to get it to play as light and low as it possibly can, since it's not far off that already. So you know, I don't expect to be needing to do too much to this, which is which is nice. First thing is to note we've got shielding paint in there to reduce interference, again, which is quite interesting when you consider the arguments that hold that only single coils are subject to this kind of interference. Well, that's not necessarily the case, since you can see here that Westfield clearly are applying shielding paint to their cavities all the way through here. So they're tidy like it. I mean, I have to say that is a tidier arrangement in there than I've seen on many a vintage costing a lot more. So, you know, there's a definite attention to quality, in at least in just in the cut of the routing. I mean, a number of vintages, for example, or Epiphones that I've looked at where there isn't even enough room here to put the screws in without the wood kind of cracking off or splintering. So there's a really nicely cut out routing there to allow plenty of room to attach the mounting plates, the cover plate screws. So in here it looks pretty standard. We've got 500k pots. Can't see the rating on the capacitors, but they're probably 47.0473, whatever that figure is. But yeah, tidy. Nothing to worry about there. Just my only thing, yeah, there's a bit of movement in the pot. There's quite a bit of movement in the pot. So they've actually been. This is a great a great demo. I don't know how well you can see this, but I was go on about how the enemy of wiring is movement. So look at this. See how excuse me. See how these move, and they've clearly moved for quite some time, and they're on their way around, and eventually they'll go around a couple of times, and that will break the solder, the contact. So I'm going to definitely leave that open, because what I'm going to want to do, I'm also going to want to shield this, since we've got shielding paint, why not? But then I'm going to retighten these pots. They're all pointing the wrong way at the moment, so you couldn't access them if you wanted to solder anyway, but that's because they're spinning around. There's also a little bit of melted wire in here. That's my neighbours again. A little bit of melted wire, which isn't so much a problem. It's only an earth wire that's got a bit of a clip by the hot soldering iron. Yeah, so I will basically just stop these things from rotating, and I'll use a bit of Loctite to do that. So I'm just going to use my two-handed knob pulling method. I don't know if you can see that. It actually works most of the time. One hand that way, one hand that way, or it's actually two. Side of finger and thumb, side of finger and thumb, and together they pull up just enough, and it's coming straight up because you're kind of using your knuckles, and it usually works. It's quite, you need a bit of brute force, but it pulls them upwards, which is the safest way. If you have to sort of woggle them, you don't really want to do that. Okay, so that should be an easy fix, and we should head off any more likelihood of the soldering contacts under there from breaking, which they will do, by the way. At that rate, they're clearly moving, so they're not going to last very long. They will eventually break, and then you've got a problem, electrical problem. Now down here also, I just want to have, yeah, the jack is loose as well, so we're going to do the same thing with that. So I'm going to make a note of these things, because pot's moving, jack moving, jack plate moving. Strap buttons nice and solid. The nut is a nice, I don't know if it's bone, but it's nicely fitted and everything. So, and the first fret action is pretty good. It's quite low. It's a bit uneven, so we'll check that out. And oh, I'm jumping ahead, but it's a little, yeah, it's relief in the neck. I'm just going to try and get neutral balance there. Okay, so while I'm doing a sort of quick look through, I'm just going to check what the actual action is. about 1.6, 1.7, 1.7 low E, and it feels like more on the high E. It is actually, it's about 2.2, and there's probably a reason for that. We'll discover. Now the thing about the first fret action, and I often talk about these things being a bit of a judgment call, so just to start off, what I'm looking to see is what are the various heights of the action over the first fret. Now typically I want 0.3 over the first fret. I haven't even got that on the low E, so that's too low really, or lower than I would aim for. It's 0.2, it's not massively under it. I'd say it's about 0.25 then, judging by this. So what I'll do is just see, yeah, 0.25, and then just as a comparator I'll go there, that's about 0.4, that's about 0.5, that's about 0.5, 0.35, 0.3. Okay, lowest one is 0.25, and that's the low E. So I'm just going to make a note of that too. First fret, lowest equals low E, not 0.25. Playable, it's not a problem, but it's just a little bit uneven, and my OCD doesn't permit that. What you have here on this neck is it's a kind of 1970s thing. Well, actually, it's not 70s, it's more of a. It's quite modern as well. They did it on some Harley Bentons even recently, but it's a light rosewood that they've darkened. Well, it appears they've darkened it, so I don't know whether it's a paint or a stain, but you end up with a fretboard that kind of has patchy light and darks on it, particularly showing, you know, where it's been played a lot. It's not that it started out with a light rosewood and then it's been greased dark by finger stuff. I don't think it's that. This guitar doesn't appear to be played enough for that. I think it's just sort of fairly standard what comes off these slightly stained necks. I don't think it looks too bad, particularly mixed in with the abalone sort of fingerboard marker things. Anyway, okay, so yeah, so the fun bit here then is to let's now go down to the action at the bridge end. I keep saying this, I always think of Wales every time I say that, but let's go down to bridge end and let's lower the action. That's not too bad. I'll just tweak that down a fraction. Well, by screwing it in would help some. There we are. Just a tiny bit more out. 1.5, and then let's take this one in a bit, because really I want the high E to be around the 1.2 mark by comparison, and it's quite a way off that, and I'm expecting, that's where I want it, I'm half expecting to find this comes with some issues now. It's not necessarily the case, it doesn't, you know, this guitar is made as well as it appears to be. We may not have a problem. Tuners work great. Slight sharp edges on the frets. Something sat down in its little slot there with a ping. Little pinging in the nut. It's your biggest enemy to tuning. Okay, so we have got a duff note in there, which isn't too bad, but it's probably why the action was a little higher on that side. Because in experience sort of tends to show that the action is usually set on an electric, second-hand electric, is usually set as low as it can go without running into underlying fret problems. And so if it's set high on one side, or high generally, it's usually because, not always, but usually because if you go any lower, as somebody invariably will have tried to have done, if you go any lower you hit the consequences of those uneven frets, which is choking and buzzing. Not bad though, it's pretty good. So I think that a very light fret level on this is worth it, because what we'll get is those notes freed up. In the same time, I can also set all the first fret action to the same amount, and if that doesn't work, we'll replace the nut, but it isn't absolutely essential. Now here, the question of how much neck relief have we got? We've got actually quite a lot on this, relatively speaking. And the way I test this is to put a capo on the first fret to make that our new nut, and then hold down the string. And it's not entirely true that it's a dead straight line, because gravity sags this string even under tension, but compared to the curvature in the neck, the string is a relatively straight line, and as a result you can see that in the midpoint between this fret and this fret, somewhere about there, you can see the extent of the gap, and this one has about 0.25 or even 0.3 of a millimetre, which is a bit more than I would normally have, but let's have a look just to see how far off the mark I am. It's kind of hard to really read it other than visually at this point. Yeah, that's over 0.3, so it's more than I would go. The thing is, it will play really nicely with that. There's no express need to take it down. So that's the thing with that I found with neck relief. What it'll do on a guitar like this, it will make this part of the neck feel a little bit higher action than anywhere else. That's the main thing. What it will do for if there are underlying fret problems, sometimes a bit of extra relief here will help. Does it help? I'm not really sure if it does. It puts this part of the neck closer to the string, so in some parts of the neck, if there's problems with high frets in the middle part, a more relieved neck will free up some clogged notes here that are caused by uneven frets. But it changes up here. If they're up here, then a extremely curved neck will cause them to hit the strings quicker. And the point about having curvature or relief in the neck is to allow the strings to kind of spin like this. Now, just as another demo, let's plug this in, just to demonstrate the amount of stretch. You might have heard me banging on about how unreleased stretch in your strings are the biggest kind of enemy to tuning stability, along with bad nut slots, man. But it's really true, and what I'll show now is we've got a guitar here that's, I guess, for all I know, Alex may have strung it recently for sale. It wouldn't surprise me at all. He's a very good seller, so it's no doubt something he would do. But just as a general point, if this was somebody's guitar, you can very often just grab the guitar, and it may have been played by a previous owner for ages. And then you can just pull handfuls of strings and watch it go out of tune. So, broadly speaking, in tune. So let's do some pulling out of the slack that's still in this neck, not the neck, right, in the strings. This isn't the best way to necessarily do it, but it's the quickest way in this situation. Starting to go out of tune. So something cut out there. Well, if something did cut out, I wouldn't be surprised if it has to do with spinning knobs. But so here we have the sound of it. Start to hear little bits of buzz. There's definitely a problem fret up here. Probably the 12th fret actually. So it's very low and testing action, but there you go. It's nice to be able to put it that low because that's the way I want it, and then we see what the problem, we then experience the problems that the frets throw up for us. But the mission will be then to use the precision fret leveling to make that setting, make the frets work with this action setting, because it's beautifully low. So that quick demo is just amazing how I've already pulled this a couple of times, the strings last night indoors while I was just trying it out, but you'd be amazed just how much you can still wring out of these strings. And the point about it is not to, I'm not criticising Alex or anybody, the point being is just to show you how significantly your tuning will be affected for months if not years with slack that's still steadfastly in your strings. And that, the important part about this is that when people get a guitar and they go, oh god, it won't stay in tune, it may be a 1500 quid USA Gibson, or it may be a budget guitar they bought off a friend or whatever, and the first thing they often will say is, you know, love the guitar, looks great and all the rest of it, but Ning won't stay in tune. And then they go and get persuaded by friends to spend 80 quid on a set of Spurts or tuners. And the reality is it's this that's causing the problem. And the only way to fix it is to get rid of all of the slack in the strings to begin with. And if you do that, and if you get the nut slots right, then you could, on your budget Strat for example, you could use the whammy bar as much as you like, and it won't go out of tune. So it's amazing how much difference it makes to get the slack out of your strings. And the truth is, it takes about half an hour of finger slicing, stretching with the, I'll show you later on in this setup, but lots of different ways. But it's only when it absolutely stops detuning, when you've given it that battering, that you're safe. Pretty much there now. this point in time doesn't guarantee that notes up here will sound like they're in tune, because that then has to do with the intonation or the overall length of each string, but that's that's another intonation issue that we'll come to. But the important bit is that this tuning instability is caused primarily by the slack in your strings, number one culprit. Secondly, by the slightest bit of pinching of the nut slots. So when I do my setup, I take care of both of those things, and you'll see how long it takes to really get rid of the slack. And the truth is, it's dead simple. Why would you want either the instability of tension or the inequality of the tension here be jumping through and causing a detuning? Why would you want that to happen anywhere during the life of your guitar? And why would you want little bits of residual stretch coming out at some point when you're playing a solo, and then suddenly you're flat and you have to rush to tune up, or between songs you hit it a bit and then you've got to tune? You don't want it. So there's only a couple of ways to make sure that doesn't happen. One is getting the slack pulled out of the strings, and the other one is making sure these nut slots are perfect. Okay, and we do that in the setup. So that's the start point. So as a quick demo really about the issue of tuning stability. There was just a momentary cutout there, which is interesting, so I'm going to keep an eye open for that. So when I go into tighten up these pots, I'm going to make sure that the connections in there are good, and if not, redo any of them. So the thing I was just on about for a second there was that the playing action on this guitar was, sorry, the playing action, the neck relief was just a fraction more than I would normally have it. So with that in mind, I'm going to take the truss rod cover off, so I can have the option to just flatten it a tiny bit more. So it's probably about half what it currently is. Now there's lots of debate about this, and people say, well, exactly what is the amount you need, blah 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 blah. And you can go and find out manufacturers' recommendations, etc., and you know, become a disciple of the numbers if you want, or you can, I recommend, probably more valuable to you, is that you start with a small amount and you experiment both sides of that small amount, and using logic as your guide. So the small amount says, the first question is, why isn't it flat, mummy? And the answer to that is because if you have a very low action, and if you couple a very low action with the fact that you know your strings describe a wider swing in the middle of their length than they do at the ends, then logic suggests, that you need some room for those strings to spin around in, and that's why it's preferable to have a little bit of relief in the neck as opposed to a dead flat fingerboard. If you have a dead flat fingerboard, very often it will play, but if you start to hit the strings a bit harder, then there's a likelihood that the strings are going to hit the fingerboard soon at that point. So that's the kind of the common sense there is about it. So if you're entitled to have a flat fingerboard, but bear in mind, the lower the action you have, more likely the strings are to hit the frets in the middle. If you know you're going for a low action, then you probably need a little bit of relief. It's advisable, sensible, logical to have a bit of relief, a bit of curvature in the neck. How much? Well, start with 1.15 of a millimetre or a little bit and see what it feels like. And in reality, see how flat you can make it without it causing the frets to the strings to hit out on the frets. And so to do that, you have to experiment. So you get your Allen key and you think to yourself, right, the strings are bending the wood this way and currently they're bending it too much. So how do I counter that? Well, I put my Allen key into the truss rod adjuster and I'm going to tighten clockwise, or in this case clockwise is that way. If you're standing, I suppose, how do you describe this? It's quite difficult. Looking at the guitar, clockwise, looking at the end of the guitar, clockwise is that way. Okay, so there we are, clockwise. So clockwise tightens the truss rod, okay, and counters the pull of the strings a little bit. So I've done a tiny bit there, and I'm just going to hold off for a second, and you can check it again straight away. It's flattened it out a little bit, so it's pretty sensitive, and you can get, if you want to do it properly, you can get your capo back on the first fret. Support the neck centrally. You don't want it sort of bending under pressure or bending the other way under gravity. And then have a look. And this is actually a little bit less, but not a massive amount less, so we could, if we wanted to. And I'd advise you to go in and do it a bit more until you see the effects of it, right? That's the whole point of this, is that you want to, if you've not done it before, you want to learn what happens when you do it. Now I can see that's now reduced the amount. What we find then is that the action around here is lower, and it feels like a tiny amount can make a considerable difference to how low the overall action feels here, even though we've probably only taken about a 0.15 maximum out of the gap here. But the amount of difference it makes to the feel of the guitar is quite substantial. Like all things to do with this geometry, tiny adjustments make big perceptual differences. So I can see that my action has had an effect of counteracting the curve. So I've tightened the truss rod and it's pulled the curve out of the neck a little bit. The other way would allow the neck to relax and allow the strings to pull, the weight of the strings to pull the neck into more of a curve. Like I said, it's far better that you experiment with this and see with your own eyes and feel with your own fingers what's happening than you take somebody's reading and just dial it in and never know what the differences are or never know what you prefer. Okay, that's why I'm not a fan of the numbers. Now, having tweaked that, now I can feel this guitar. It feels different, just that. Tiny amount makes a difference. Now, this is why the action was high, higher. We're getting some choke on bends, and that's just due to one of these frets being higher than the others, and we can take that out with a precision fret leveling. Okay, so I've set the action down here the way I like it, basically what I call the last fret action, and you do it with the bridge obviously. So I've created the last fret action that I want, which is 1.5 here and 1.1, 1.2 down there. I've chosen the amount of curvature or relief I want in the neck, and I'm now going to set these set the nut slots to give a first fret action which is all the same, and in this case because we've got one at 0.25 already, I'm going to do it all to 0.25, otherwise I'd need to realistically build up that one or knock the nut off and replace it. Now I could replace it with a bone one, but this is quite nicely joined and everything looks tidy here, so if I can do it with this existing one I will. And also I don't want to just add endlessly to the cost of this, because this wasn't a cheap guitar. It was a good price guitar from Alex, but it wasn't a dirt cheap one to begin with. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 10s on this guitar. I'm going to put 10s on it. So I'm going to start using my massive collection of thingies, and I'm going to match up a set. But rather than go with a set that look anything like the numbers on there, I'm going to go higher than each of them, because the one thing I don't want, or the one thing I want to prevent, is this lethal binding in the slot. And I can promise you, if you use the exact matching radius, not radius, gauge, the exact matching file for the given gauge, like if that says 10, 13, 17, if I use a 10, 13, 17 to cut those slots, they will bind and you will have tuning problems. It's a fact. And I find you need to go at least 3 thou, ideally, up. So, and I don't have the exact kind of matches here, but for example, 10, I go 13. 13, I go 16. 17, I'm going to go 20 something, or yeah, if I got it. I don't want to go 17. I've got a 17, but I've got two 17s as it happens. I'm going to go 24. it doesn't, it's nowhere near too big, believe me. You have to go a long way before you actually come into, and think about it, if, you know, and the purists, right, this is another area people get really hot under the collar. If somebody said to me, well, you can't, you know, a slot for a 17 string, you can't use a 24, go and buy a guitar off the shelf, and then if you can get fine enough, I don't think you can with any device, but if you could measure the slots, the guitar will come with a nut most of the time that is pre-cut to take the biggest possible gauge string, not the smallest. It would be cut to accommodate the biggest possible gauge. Now, if the biggest gauge of a G that I might find is a wound one and it might be 24 or something, right? Believe me, it's not, it'll be cut for that 24, and you can drop an unwound G in there and it won't suddenly stop playing because it's got too much space. What it'll do is actually play very nicely. So what I'm saying is that the tolerance between the actual gauge of the string and the size of the slot size of the slot is large. There's a large difference, but it has to be a huge amount before you get any sort of string jumping around, not sitting properly problems. All right. So I've learned from experience that where I've got a 17 and I've got, for example, I might ideally want a 22, but I haven't got one, and I'll use a 24. You'll see in the finished result that it's absolutely fine, because, as I say, a mass-produced guitar will come with nut slots that are already pretty much often that loose anyway. In fact, you might find that my chosen file will just drop into here with no problem at all. It won't be stiff or tight. So 26 is the given grade, and I'm going to go 28 is a bit close to my liking. I don't want to go 26. I probably want to go 32 if I've got one. So as it happens, you see, I've got a couple of different sets here which gives me the option to choose, and that's about 150 quid's worth of nut files. If you buy my soon to be released ebook, I will show you how to do all of that with one file that costs £1, instead of having a set of 150 quid's worth of these expensive things to choose from. 36, I'm going to go 42. 46, I can only go 48, and actually I'm looking at this and I need a new 48 if I'm going to carry on using these, which I tend to do for speed, or I need a wire brush to clean the hell out of this thing because it really is clogged. Anyway, there's my sort of, I suppose you could call it an offset set, above oversized, over geared set. And like I say, in the setup I show in my ebook, I use the simplest of files, which does all the slots with the same file, which is absolutely brilliant, and it's a great way to do it. Why am I using this? For the simple reason that buying customers have been programmed to expect nut slots that look like this, even though they're actually more troublesome. So it's a kind of a nod to buying and selling to some degree. Anyway, so where am I going to start? I'm going to start with my D. So what I do to begin with is I drop off the E and the A, and I lift, well, first of all I measure the gap on the D, and I use my 25 as the guide now, because I'm lowering these just slightly to 25. If this doesn't feel right once I've done it, then I will replace the nut. It's as simple as that. This is on the mark. I'm not even going to do anything to that one. All right, simple as that. Go up to tension. This is under 25. See, I was wrong. It's the A that's the lowest one. I didn't quite get to it from either side, but the A is probably, if it's sub 0.2, I think we should just knock the thing off. It's 0.2. Do I want to do all of them? Well, if we do all of them at 0.2, then I go back to the D. Let's try it and see what we end up with. So at 0.2, the G needs a tiny adjustment, and you were using the 0.032. It's almost there. So we're there on 0.02. We know that's 0.2 to begin with, so we don't do anything with that one. Quick, and then we go to the the low one, which is, blimey. Now, having tweaked the relief a little bit, we are barely on 0.2, so I was right. That is the lowest of the low, but it plays. So let's not worry too much. Let's go up to these top ones, which are a little higher setup. And we start with the G moving outwards, and this one will be, there's a visible sort of gap there, so we can work the G down somewhat. And I'm just cutting down and backwards at an angle. Still some fresh air. And if I use these nut files, which is quite funny because I don't really have to do it if I use the jeweler's file, but if I use the nut files to cut the slots, then I tend to end up right at the end of everything by using some sandpaper to widen the slots wherever necessary, so there's no gripping or pinging, and you usually can hear it very clearly right at the end of everything. Okay, that's just on the mark. Ooh, that got caught under a fret. Some people get really nervous about cutting the first fret or the slots low to give such a low first fret action, and one of the things that's worth, if you're freaked out by that, one of the things that's worth doing is, for your own peace of mind, is to get a capo, shove it on the first fret, and then using that as the nut, look at what the new capoed first fret action is, which is the action over this fret, the real second fret, if you get what I mean. And you'll see that a capoed guitar, the action over the first fret is incredibly low. It's something like 0.015. It's a really small amount. So our measurements of 0.3s or 0.2s or whatever we're going to here, 0.2, is still above what you actually get when you play with a capo, which you never hear people going, oh, I can't play with that feel at that first fret action is too low, I think I'm going to have to junk the capo. People, actually a lot of people, seem to like how easily the guitar plays with the capo, and there's a reason for that, and that's exactly because it creates because it uses the geometry of the frets to set the playing action on the first fret, rather like a 0 fret does, by the way, because it uses the natural geometry rather than shoving a big plastic artificial nut or bone nut in this position here. Because it uses that basic geometry of the neck to dictate the action, it's beautifully low, and it's the way it actually should be. Now the only reason I don't go quite as low as a capo is because again that sort of the feel can freak people out. It's not what they're used to. But if you want a light as a feather action at this end, oh Christ, this keeps catching under frets. I've got to take care of those because it's annoying me. Yeah, so we got some scratchy, sticky up frets here, which are actually sharp, so they need taking care of. And in a way, that's the only concession or downside to the budget, the low budgetness of this, the fact that it's got some sharp fret edges that we've got to take care of. But that's what I like to do, so that's what I will do. Now, some people also worry about, well, what if I get this bit wrong and I cut this too low? Just about on the mark. Worry about, what if it's too low? What if I cut it too low? Will it play? What will I do? And if you cut it too low, you've got a number of options. You can, the simplest one, or the lowest tech one if you like, the brain off one, is to knock the nut off and replace it with another one, which if this doesn't play the way I like, because I've been forced down, if you like, to a 0.2 action, which I might not have chosen, I still have the option to take the nut off if I don't like it and replace it with a bone one. If you cut too far, then at the most expensive, the worst case, have another nut standing by and put it on and do it again. All that will happen is that for your £4 for a new nut, or whatever it might cost you, you just paid £4 to have a really good learning experience, because you've got a whole one go under your belt. So I think it's a really positive thing to do. That's the most expensive option. If you don't do that, then you can also use the super glue and bicarbonate of soda method, which means you get some CA glue, which is this very, it gets everywhere, but this very runny, not it's low viscosity, lots of runniness, and you basically take string off, fill the little slot with bicarb or bone powder if you've got it, which I have, because I often shave down saddles and nuts. Put some bone dust or some bicarbonate of soda, not baking powder but bicarbonate of soda, into there. Drop a tiny drop of this runny glue onto there, making sure you protect the fingerboard and the paint so it doesn't spill out. Let it set, and then you've got a new solid substance. It's like a cement that you can then file down and start again. So that's a real get out of jail free if you overcut. That's cheap as chips. The alternative, if you don't have that, you can knock the nut off, put a shim under it, raise the whole lot up, and just cut down a little bit further to reach the correct heights for all of them. Again, that leaves you with a little step. You might end up seeing a little gap where you shimmed it, or you might just see the sandwich of the piece of white plastic you put under there. That's perhaps a downside of it, but you know, these are zero cost ways of getting out of trouble. If you, by the way, if you also buy your nut, your replacement nuts from the Chinese suppliers, they're perfectly good quality and they cost almost nothing. I mean, about £1.50 or something, or less, about £1 for each, or you know, you can find really cheap, and they do the job absolutely fine. They're bone. I don't want to even begin to think what they're from, but they are bone and they work great. Okay, so now just a quick recap on this guitar, just make sure the thing's running. Yep, okay, so I've taken this very nice guitar and straight away discovered a few little things we need to take care of. First of all, the spinning pots, because that will lead to electrical breakages, and possibly even one there already, since it cut out a bit weirdly a minute ago. So I've taken the knobs off and the back plate off, and I'm going to go in there later on and tighten those up and lock them down with some blue Loctite, which I like to use, which it's not permanent, it's semi-permanent, but it will keep the things from from spinning in the future. Movement and electrics are your worst enemy, so I'm going to take care of the jack plug as well, because that's subject to lots of levering forces, and that always comes undone and breaks the electrical contact. Next thing then is I set the action, which comprises three things. It's the height of the last fret action adjusted by the bridge, the amount of curvature in the neck, which I've reduced, and the first fret action, which I've also reduced to make them pretty consistent across all of them. Now that done, I'm ready now to make these frets comply, and we've tested it a little bit, and we know that it's pretty good actually, considering you could play this but some things would choke off more than we'd like. So since we can, and since this is the point of doing this guitar, now I'm going to just lightly tweak these frets to make them comply with this, what is currently an amazing low action. If it just so happens, for whatever reason, the geometry of this won't allow this to play the way I'd like it, we've made it so low we do have some room for upward movement and still have a great action. So that's always a nice backup position. But I'll do the fret leveling, and the aim will be, as we level each string in each strip, will be to, I know there's a problem there, so 12th fret is a problem on a couple of these high strings, which is why, by the way, that action was cranked up a bit on that side. So the aim of the fret leveling will be to audibly reduce this, and once we've done that, then I stop leveling and we move on to the next one, and we do that until all the notes play clearly, and then we stop. And it's a really good way of leveling frets whilst taking the minimum of material off, and it's something that none of the other methods can do, I have to say. None of them can. They all tend to take a bit more than you actually need, which is not. It's never a good thing, because fret life is guitar life. You know, the time between somebody having to take their guitar for an expensive refret, maybe 150 quid's worth of refret or 175 or whatever, you know, the more time you don't have to go there, the better. So heavy-handed fret levelings that don't really respect, or to put it simply, that take more than they need to make the guitar play properly, is a problem. But with this method, it's the only method of the various methods, the only approach that by default respects the fret metal and only takes as much as you need to make the action you've chosen play. And you'll see how that works in a minute. It's pretty straightforward, whilst being slightly magical at the same time. One of the other things about this too is when you're putting your strings on, I recommend having a stringing process or system that strings the guitar with as little string around the what do they call them? Those things, the pegs, as possible. Just from the simple point of view that the more string you have on there, the simple point of view that any amount of string stores slack. So the more you have on there, the more slack you've got waiting to kind of eke its way out over the months of playing and detune your guitar, and you don't want that. So if you can work out a system, and the one I use is pretty good at keeping the minimum amount of string on there to hold grip best. That's what you want. Okay, so I've just talked myself into taking the strings off when I didn't need to. I need to just slack them off. What a plonker. Okay. Right, so while I'm here, don't do as I do. My aim was to slack the strings off in order to do this, which is to quickly cover all the frets with some marker pen. Instead, I went and pulled the whole damn lot off. Lucky I didn't cut them, because I can now put them back on so they'll do the job I need them for. But what a purlonker. Blah blah blah. Half asleep. Right, I'll get these strings now and waste my life and yours putting them back on. And for once, I will do an edit. Oh, miraculously, restrung. My fret leveling tool has got some fresh, what's that stuff called? Sandpaper on it, and I'm ready to go. So here we go. I'm going to whiz on now, and I'm going to put on the little brass feet that are central to this engagement, and I'm going to try and centralize, spread these things equidistantly across the neck, and there we are. That's my start points. And what I like to do at that point is to stick on a bit of a bit of masking tape, just so I know where I'm using the old brass feet at this point, so I can just replace them, because several times throughout this operation I like to recalibrate the tool, the banana tool as I like to call her, yeah, to make sure that I'm as the relief can change across the radius, I'm going to make sure that this tool matches it wherever it is on that radius. Okay, so right now I'm going to get my Allen key, hex key, and I'm just going to tweak a little bit of curvature into this neck, place it down on the far left, drop it down, move it side to side, still missing the middle one, so it tells me straight away that the rod is flatter than the curve in the neck. However small that curve is, this is a great way of knowing that. Now here we have, it's touching the end first, it feels like, but it is pretty much equal on the middle, so I would say that's a good match to begin with. Pull those out of the way, drop the string off the side, spread the string with my little rubber or plastic block or whatever you've got, and then the magic happens. We take the, you can hear a brand new sandpaper, we drop it on top of the what I call the E track, which is the space that the E string lives in, which extends from the very edge of this neck in towards touching the B string, but with a kind of obvious focus on the track that the E follows. And I'm just going to use this tool pretty much under gravity at the moment, just to do some cutting, and then stop and have a diagnostic look. It's really hard to see, but I show it in some detail in this ebook I'm producing. But it tells me straight away it's cutting pretty much every fret, which I sort of expect because it's a very good action already, and it's cutting everything, which means I've got the curve right, and actually there aren't that many uneven frets. But what it's doing is it's cutting the one that needs to come down a little bit. It's doing that, it's cutting it. So even as far as that, I stop. Oh geez, I keep catching the string under the fret. This is not good. Stop, put the string back in its place under tension, and carefully play. Every note, and it's freed up that 12th fret, but I'm just going to do a smidgen more. Now, how much more you do this is without a doubt an experiential based thing, you know, experience based thing. When you've done it loads of times, you'll get a sense of how much more you need to do, or when to stop. So honestly, I can't tell you that. It's just a feel thing. But because this is 400 grit, it's very light grit, and it's very hard for you to go instantly wrong with such a low grit. Oh man! You can see how that's driving me mad. I keep catching the string. A tiny bit more. The more precise it is, or the tighter all the tolerances are, as in how low our action is, how much we're pushing it to get, how precisely level, relatively level I should say, we need this to be in order to play with this low action that we've set. Then the more careful and delicate you've got to be, and the more kind of precise, I guess, in using this. But we shall see any minute. Now, these, as I said before, these frets are quite little worn. Watch out for the edge of the frets, Samuel. They're quite little worn, so there is room to do this. But around about now, my judgment call comes in, and I can see that this is a phenomenally low action for a Les Paul. It's unbelievably low actually, and if I want I can raise it, and which I'm going to live with. Now what we'll find is, just because of the slight changes to the playing the nut action, we'll probably find this is now just kind of stupidly low. Well, where am I on the last fret? It is just 1 millimeter. Yeah, that's incredibly low, and I've got it playing. Now I also know that just stopping at that point there, I know that the polishing sanding process is also going to take a micro fraction off the height of the frets, so an extra little bit of leveling is going to be done at that point. So I know enough to stop there and let the sanding just eke out a little bit more space in the clearances there. So I go into the B track now, and sometimes you can just use your fingers to guide the banana so that it stays kind of where you need it most, but you do need to get all of the frets, because you've got to remember the strings need to bend adequately and successfully, so there's no point having sort of nicely levelled troughs in this direction with humps that the string has to ride up and over when you're bending it. So you do need to sort of treat this whole sort of area in the same kind of way, and the one you did before and this one typically blend into each other. But this is I'm using the same calibration of the tool for these first two, and then I'm going to recalibrate it for the G track. So the E and B, I tend to use the same calibration. You can see I'm not exactly bashing it, but I'm not shy of working the sandpaper, and then drop that back in and then have a feel. Perfect. I'm going to do one more in that outside track. Call me crazy. The only reason for that is I can see the amount of pressure I've used on the B track, which has created a really nice set of notes, and I'm going to do the same just quickly with the E track and get the same, hopefully the same clear playing out of it, as I say, just because I can. And also it's going to create a characteristically remarkably low action. Okay, now replacing the neck, replacing the string, I'm now going to put the little brass widgets back on in position, and I'm putting them between the B and the G, and I'm going to calibrate for the G track, and I'm just going to look and see whether it's still working the same, or the curve is still the same. And again, this is very much a touch and feel thing, and it'll take a little time to get used to it, but once you've done it, it will literally become second nature, and you won't have any trouble determining exactly when the curvature is perfectly matched. And your judgment about that will be borne out by the way the tool cuts the frets, and so you'll be able to confirm that you've made the right judgment, because you'll see it cutting the frets all the way, or pretty much at the same time, except for ones that are uniquely low or especially high, they'll cut slightly differently. But the way the tool cuts confirms your judgment about the setting the curvature you set in it, which is quite good. Helps you learn and know what you're doing. So stop at that point, observe how it's cutting, sort of diagnostic check, and then cut a little tiny fraction more in that G slot. Like I said, if I get it as low as I want, and then if I feel that I'm still not quite getting the bends right, or there's a little choking going on the bends, then I may just compromise by a tiny raise in the bridge action, which usually just frees those notes up. So I'm trying to do it by the process of fret leveling first, but then if necessary I've got plenty of leeway or room to wiggle with the action settings, because that's the benefit of starting so adventurously or ambitiously low to begin with. So what I'm doing now is just going to try this again, and it is a judgment, you know, you think to yourself, okay, so what plays well there also has to play well when we bend that note over and that note, so that could be just catching in the D slot, sorry, the B slot for all I know. But I'll stop there because this is phenomenally low, and I would rather do a minuscule upward tweak of the action than carry on grinding away trying to get this working just on fret leveling alone. Okay, so again a little check here at the thing. Now this is now hitting in the middle first, so what's happening is the relief on this side has just slightly flattened out, so I'm slacking off and flattening the banana alongside that. Now that's made the banana fractionally too flat. It's very, very sensitive. A lot of people ask me which truss rod to use, and the answer is whichever one responds the way you can work with, and they all have a different response to adjustment, and to me the way they respond to adjustment is the thing that's made the decision to which one I use. So up on the shelf there I have got 4 or 5 of different lengths, some completely long enough to do this job, some a little bit shorter. I've got one bass one that can do bass guitars. This is the only one with the adjustment happens in a way that I can control and that suits my style of working. As it happens, it's a little bit short for the neck, but I don't mind that. I'd rather lose the length and gain the control of the adjustment. That's really important for me. But you might, you might find a different one that works for you, and it may have different properties which suit you better. So there's no hard and fast rule. People say, which one shall I use? And I said, well, go for a 46cm one. But you may find, or if you find, like I do, that this 42cm one is the better adjustable one for your liking, then you may find yourself going with the better adjuster over the correct length. If you can find both together in a single thing, good. Good. And we're romping home now, lining up to do the A track. So just recalibrating again for the A. That's good. Like I said, it's so much about feel, that little judgment there. It's how the tool contacts those brass nuts tells you. And there's some visual component to it, but there's an awful lot of feel component to it, which is very difficult to describe. And I heartily recommend that you just try it for yourself, and you'll get it very quickly. It's dead easy. But this is such an elegant way, because I'm doing a little bit of leveling, and then I stop, and I'm going to check the notes, and I'm not going to do any more than is necessary to make the notes play the way I want them to. My fingers are too big for the frets anyway, but that's good. Okay, so it's a final calibration. Sounds like a song by a group in the 80s. The final calibration, da, 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 da. And amazingly, that is more curved right on the edge than it is one string track inwards. Trust your senses, grasshopper. Look, I'm jiggling it, moving it, and it's not moving the middle one. So it's deeper on the edge, a deeper curve on the edge than in the A track next door. Okay, that's moving it. Done. Drop the string off, spread the string, wield the tool, baby. Now, an interesting question. As I'm doing this, I'm starting now to think, what am I going to do with these horrifically sharp frets? And what I need to do is I need to take away the overhang bit, because I don't want the string really, the string catching isn't really relevant to anyone unless they're doing work on it, or they're changing the strings. They might just get a string caught, and it's not the end of the world, but it's relevant to me insofar as the important bit is the feel of it. So in removing the catchiness, I'll should also remove the sharpiness. Good. So we have a set of frets levelled so far as to make them play with this monstrously ambitious action that I've chosen, and I keep reiterating that I really am I don't give the neck an easy time. You see, on all my setups I start from a very low action. I set a very low action, and I do my utmost to make the neck comply and fall into line with that. And occasionally there are some guitars where I've just not just for one reason or another I have not been able to get to that place that I want exactly, and I've had to compromise and make a tiny tweak on the action, and it's kind of like a defeat for me. But so, you know, just bear in mind that the challenge we're putting on this neck, or these frets, at this height of this action is quite amazing. I mean, this is I can promise you, if Alex were to play this again, he'd be amazed just about how different it feels from the guitar he played yesterday. And that's because those tiny adjustments make an enormous difference in the way the guitar plays, which is the beauty of the process, really. So I'm very comfortable that we've got the frets leveled nicely. The question now, well, first of all, I'm going to take off all the strings, because these sacrificial strings now have done their job. I've got it the right way around this time. I could keep them for another such guitar. It's always good to have a sacrificial set ready, but they've been put on and off a couple of times, thanks to my mistaking. But anyway, the point is that once the whole setup is done and everything's polished up and nicely, then I put a new set of 10s on ready for sale anyway. But yeah, the sacrificial strings, the reason I call them that is because you see with the fret leveling and also the action setting, particularly at the nut, there is quite a lot of pulling on and pulling off of the strings, and I don't want to do those with new strings, so it's so much better to have an old set knocking about that you can do it with. Now these are, I believe, judging by the feel of them, these are 10s anyway. I could be wrong, and Alex might correct me on that, but if they aren't, and if they're 9s and I've done the setup with 9s, the amount of difference it makes in terms of the action setting is almost, or the fret leveling is negligible. Where it might make a tiny difference would be it may load the neck a tiny bit more, in which case we can dial it out and we return it. We use the truss rod at the end to return it to where we want. Now I've got so many sets of strings. I'm going to cut these and bin them. Actually, they're quite new, aren't they? Let's see if I can get them out in one piece without tangling them up. That's the slow, boring, annoying bit, is that to get them out and reuse them, you have to straighten them a little bit, disentangle them. But, you know, that won't come out unless I somehow bend that flat. Right, so here we go. So next step for this guitar is to recrown these frets. Now again, I keep getting the bloody things caught up. Again, with this method, what I'm using is tools that I've bought along the way, and the tool I'm going to use to recrown is the StewMac crowning file, fret crowning file, and it features concave, offset concave, diamond coated, yada 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 file. And I'm not averse to expensive tools, and if you do loads of setups, then a tool like that, you pay more money for it, a lot of money for it, but you pay because it's easy. So you pay for the ease and the time saving mainly, and but you also have to realise that you can achieve the same thing by hand, with quote unquote hand, with other less expensive tools. In reality, it just takes you longer, and so if you're doing loads, you might pay for the convenience. If you're not doing so many, I recommend you use the cheaper method, and I'll show you how to do that in the ebook. It keeps saying, oh my god, where's the string? Come on. I get a little bit caught down in the gaps in the shed. Right, yeah, so I'll show you how to do it with a simple three-sided file, which is of course way cheaper. So I'll just dig it out and show you. So that's what I show you how to do it with. It's very, very possible to do, but because I'm doing this, you know, a bit day-to-day business-wise, I'm going to use the StewMac thing. So that's at most a tenner. I bought that one from Amazon a couple of years ago. That one's about £80, £90. So there is a substantial difference. So you can see that you can save loads. Okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to just wipe off some of the dust on here for a second. Now I don't know how much of the paint or the dye on this neck is going to come off when I use this solvent. Hopefully not too much, because it's got quite a nice vintagey look about it, so that's okay. Just kind of calm the dust down there so it doesn't get all over my hands when I'm doing this. Okay, so the frets have taken a bit of levelling, so there's not a massive amount, but so they're a little bit flatter than they were before, and to make them play properly we need to round them off again. So instead of being a flat thing, we're going to, instead of being dead flat and with a shelf, we're going to round them back off to a nice arch shaped, and to do that we're going to use this StewMac file, and the reason we need to round them off is to make them A, easier to play, B, remove the scratching from the fret. Actually no, we're actually going to replace that with a bigger grit or a rougher grit when using this, because we leveled with 400 and the grit on this tool is 300. Anyway, the main point is to reshape it, but to reshape it without taking the height of the fret down or adjusting that downwards in any way, since we've painstakingly leveled it all off. So if we did it with this tool, we'd have to work either side, round off the fret but avoid the top, and this one's kind of designed to do that automatically. So I get the edge of the tool and I run it down here, and it quickly cuts the edges of the file where the flat spots are. Fret cuts the edges of the shoulder of the fret where the flat top is, but it leaves the pen, the marker pen, untouched down the middle, and the idea is to just keep going until you leave just a pencil thin moustache down the middle of the fret, and that tells you you've rounded off the flat edge, you've brought it to an arch shape, but you haven't touched the top, and that's what the marker pen does for us. So it's a good tool, it's quick, as you can see. We'd still be on the first one if we were doing this by hand using the other file. So this can always down here. But you have to stop and spend more time on the frets that took more flattening, because they take a bit more rounding off, but the same applies with the three-sided file. You have to pay more attention with that one in those spots as well. So it's not a massively complicated job, but it's just really important to do. I've had guitars come from manufacturers that have gone a sort of one step further than a lot of manufacturers do, and you know, I've bought necks where the manufacturers actually leveled the frets for you. Obviously they've done it with a passive method where they've made the neck as flat as possible and then probably used a radius block or something to do it. And that's great that they've taken the trouble to do that, but they also bizarrely left them with the flat spots on, kind of presuming that they weren't so flattened that it would make that much difference. And the truth is, as long as they're polished a bit, then it doesn't. You can play them. But the reason we go to the trouble of recrowning them like this is that when they're flattened, the intonation point moves a little bit closer towards the bridge, which makes every note just a tiny bit, a fraction off its true intonation or its true pitch that it should be. And it's very small, but if the flat spot is very large, it could be as much as half a millimetre, or sorry, as much as a millimetre, I would say, I guess. And that, you know, if you were going to be a millimetre off at this end, you'd expect to notice it in the way the notes played on the different parts of the neck. So a millimetre movement in the intonation point is not a good thing. That's why we go to this trouble. And then once we've done this and reshaped it, then it's beholden unto us to also then go and polish it to the smoothest finish we can so that it plays nicely. because if we just jumped on and played it there, it would be scratchy and a bit uncomfortable to play. That's the difficult bit about doing these edges here. Now while the strings are off, and before working with the sandpaper to polish these frets up, now is the perfect time to sort out these edges and any overhangs. And you can feel them, they're catching the fingers pretty rotten. Now I currently am a bit annoyed to say I don't have my perfect tool for it, because I've lost the expensive StewMac file that I need. But you kind of almost can see this has been interesting. This has been refretted possibly. That's what seems to have happened. I think this has been refretted. I think that's what's happened. That's why it's an old guitar. The die is worn partly off the fingerboard. I just want to take a close-up of this just to, so I can kind of make the point later on. Yeah, there's a telltale sign that it's been refretted. And you know, it's a good job in most respects, but that's why we're getting this little bit of overhang. So if I can just take this picture here, get it focused please, and I can show you what makes me say that. I do this every time I come to the workshop. I go to take one picture and my phone is always out of batteries. How many, if you've watched my stuff regularly, how many times have I done this? Anybody who doesn't believe in iPhones must be laughing. Right, so I won't get you an ultra high resolution picture. What I can show you, I use the ultra high resolution Sony camera. Hello my darling. Right, just one sec. So can you see the little cutaway on the binding? It's like where somebody's fret saw has come through and just dug out the binding. If this was from the factory, you wouldn't have that because the binding is put on after the frets have been done, I think. Well, I'd be pretty certain it would be. Another little interesting thing is this blob of paint here. It's from the factory as well. It's only a minor thing, but it's a smooth blob. Hey, alright, how was shopping? Yes please miss. Tea? Yes please miss, thank you. I've just done that thing where I've gone to the whole thing of, oh now I'm going to take a close-up picture with my iPhone to show you this overhanging fret. And I get all lined up, focus it, out of battery. And there's so many times I've done this.
You're so well prepared.
No, but on camera, I must have done this a dozen times.
You're like that woman, that expert the other day, who had all those failures online in front of her audience. And she was a website specialist.
Oh,
do you remember?
God no. God no, never been one of those.
And she ended up saying, these things happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the best excuse for a technical breakdown. Right.
Alright, see you in a bit.
Come on then. Follow the vacancy.
So yeah, I lost my StewMac wonderful file that's perfect for doing this. So I'm using the three-sided jobby here, and I'm just, you can hear it attacking the overhang, and I'm just trying to round it off. It runs the risk of just slightly scuffing, wouldn't be the right word, but just running onto the lacquer, which is the price you pay if it's been refretted like this. But it's a minor thing, so what I'm doing is I'm just taking the overhang off, or I'm doing my very best to round it into the kind of same profile or same curve as the fingerboard, so the two don't feel like they're separate from each other. I have to say, overall, it is a pretty good fret job, but just for the lack of attention to detail to these little edges. What I'll do is I will stop the camera in a minute, because this is just going to take a while, and I'm going to go over, I'm going to get this file, I'm going to do into the edges here to get the sharp sides off. And then once I've done the kind of hard mechanical stuff, the rough stuff, then I will then pay attention to these edges when I come to do the sanding process on all the frets, and it will take that softening job into account at that point. So that's why I'm doing this now, so that the stage that we're going to go into anyway, which is sanding down the newly flattened and crowned frets, also sort of takes this bit of work into consideration as well, and softens off this sort of bit of filing I've done, and the result will be, I've done it loads of times, the result will be a nice soft comfortable edge, and you won't, the next owner won't even know it, but you'll see it you'll see it on this video. It's what somebody has to do when you fret a guitar. And this feel and the little gap here is a hallmark of a lovingly, in some ways, refretted guitar. You know, this is a guitar that somebody's really cared about and enough to refret it once the frets have worn out, so that's a really good sign. It's better to, you know, to have inherited a guitar of this age or this vintage with a newer set of frets on it, which allows me to do the fret leveling and everything to set it up nicely. But we're just seeing the economies of somebody fretting it themselves. Okay, I'm on the 11th fret. I'm going to stop the camera and get on, and I'll probably come back after I've done all of this softening, edging work and have my big consani. See you in a minute. Quick update here. Neck is masked off, and now I'm going to run the sanding process, which is going to use two 600 pieces, two 1000s and two 1500s, followed by a micro mesh sanding set from 1500 through to 12,000, followed at the end of it all by a dose of Autosol. Other chrome polishes are available. Anyway, I'm going to go off camera to do that because it's noisy and boring, and breakfast is right, so see you in a minute. Back with you, and you can see this has all been sanded, polished, and finally auto-soled. Nice, smooth, clean, shiny, lovely. And I'm going to peel off all the sand tape. No, that's not the word. Masking tape, and chuck all this gunge away. But you can see it's a filthy old process when it comes to the polishing part, or the sanding and polishing part. But it's a very worthwhile doing, because what you get out of it is a beautifully shined up level fretboard, and in this case one that allows us to have an extremely low playing action if we want it. Now while I was doing this, the nut popped off. That's because I knocked it while I was sanding it, and what I've done is just super glue it back on, because as it came off I double checked what it was made of, and it's actually a bone nut, so that's good. And it's the right shape and colour and everything, so it's just right to keep it on. There's no point replacing it. So I super glued that back on, and I'm quite comfortable doing that without cleaning more of the any of the hard glue out of the nut slot, because actually, if anything, what it does is it will just raise my playing action by 0.05-ish of a mil, which is sort of what we wanted anyway, given the that the original owner's slot was a little bit, previous owner's slot was a little bit low. So as it happens, we kind of, with the extra bit of glue to re-glue it, we probably just raised it, shimmed it with glue, if you get what I mean, by a tiny amount, which is would be just fine for what we're doing. Okay, so I'm just cleaning the dust off the back, and then going to clean it off the front here. It builds up on the scratch plate obviously as well, so just a quick going over with the, what's this stuff called? Naphtha, or in this case it's actually petroleum, or a version of naphtha. Just give everything a quick dust off, and then I'm going to go over the fingerboard here one more time. Now I've also taken, while I was doing the sanding, I've also thoroughly sanded the edges off, so that combined with the filing that I did means that we're going to now have a much nicer soft edge to the fingerboard without those catching bits that were driving me mad because they were catching the strings. Okay, well this guitar, other than that, you know, that little sort of turbocharge to the action and a little tiny bit of tightening up I've got to do on the pots inside, in a sense, in most ways now this is the hard bit's done. The action is set, and what's going to happen is, the beauty of doing this precision fret leveling the way I do it, is that when I come to put the strings, new strings back on this guitar, what will happen is that the action will now come back up to the action it was before while we were leveling it, and so it'll go back into the perfect configuration. Right now obviously the neck will be probably slightly bowed, if anything, because it's not under load, and quite naturally, we understand it will go sort of settle backwards, but when we put it under load it will go right back to the action, the level that we achieved using the fret leveling process. Now what I've got to do here is something that's a bit difficult for you to see, but I think you'll probably get the drift. I'm going to, probably could see if I was doing it this way, yeah, you can see it. I'm going to gently rotate these pots around to where they should be, sort of, well, facing this way, so that there's at least a chance of being able to solder anything to the front of them. Otherwise, now what you can't see is I'm taking off the nut on this side, and as I do it I'm going to take it, I'm going to push the pot through and hold it through, push the washer back against the guitar body as far as I can, and I'm going to dab a little tiny bit of blue Loctite on the washer and on the thread. Now that's going to spill a minute and go onto the finish of the guitar, but that's fine. I'm going to quickly do it up hand tight and check the position of this again. Now the problem is I've got to get my finger in here, hold the pot still while I tighten up the nut again, and I don't want the pot to go spinning round. I do want a firm grip, and the pot's starting to spin again there. Problem I've got, as any of us have got, is that you can't hold these darn things, and they do need to be quite tightly shoved. Now the risk, as you can probably straight away tell, is that in handling this stuff we're in very definite likelihood of breaking a connection, so that's another thing we have to watch out for. But in the sense of getting everything into the position it needs to be in before locking it or securing it down, let's see if we can see what I'm doing here, then we have to do it. There's no real escape. So what I do is I put a little dab of Loctite. I keep it low to the body because I can always clean it off the body. I don't want it going inside the shaft of the nut. No, pot is the word I'm looking for. So I put it down there with my fat sausage fingers. Try get the damn thing on, get it on, do it finger tight. Now go back to here, gently try and move things away so I can actually hold the darn thing, and then apply some welly to keep it firmly in one place forever. Keep it turning, so make sure it's still working nicely, and then just brush off the blue. The blue on the nut itself doesn't matter because that's going to be underneath the pot, the knob I should say. I'm just going to slack this one off and then turn it again. I'll wedge my finger in there to hope that that's going to keep it. There's not a lot of room to stop this one moving. But you know, it's just it's just inherent in the way that these things are built. You know, it's a very old-fashioned, kind of prehistoric system of hoping to secure something that constantly has to be hit by the hand and moved, and why anyone ever thought that this system would work. Now, even while I'm holding this still, I'm putting a load of pressure on it. It's more than likely bending the lugs on the nut, so I have to, it's really important to go back over this with a fine-tooth comb, aka a bit of a good set of reading glasses, and I'm just going to turn this one round into its natural position with the lugs pointing inwards, same as the others, and then put a little blob of glue on there. It does make it hard to remove these, right? And so if somebody wanted to upgrade these pots later, you're going to need strong hands and a pair of adjustable, an adjustable spanner like I've got going here. But my trial and errors have shown me that I would much prefer this thing stay where it is for the life of the guitar, or for the sake of it staying functional for somebody who's using it, rather than you know, sell it to somebody and then have the knobs spin. You know, it isn't too difficult to fix, but it's just just becomes an issue that you have to either talk somebody through or help somebody to do. Now I've got a little device here, a StewMac device, that allows me to do this up without taking the whole thing off, which I could do, but since I've got the back open. But now what I'm going to do is I want to undo this first, so I'm kind of using it in reverse. I can get it's so hard to get the nut off, and what's going to happen is the thing's going to want to fall through. I can't stop it really. I'm just trying to pull back enough so I can get some Loctite under there. I can probably do it without it all coming apart. Providing I lift with my finger. Right, let's put it down here because I can't get to it. Just can't get to it. Need to lift it up. Lift it up somehow. Glue this stuff into. Try a blade. Come out. Stand out. Sorry you can't see anything. Just trying to hold the darn thing out of the slot. Squirt some blue goo. Again, I don't really care too much how much I put on there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this thing in here. I'm going to turn it backwards, which does the job of sort of locking it to allow me to tighten the outside nut upwards, if you get what I mean. And together, the holding power of this little tool and the turning power of the adjustable spanner, together these miraculous things will give us a rock solid jack plug socket. It takes a bit of faff, and it's starting to bite now. Now I can just do this up nice and square so it's not going to slip anywhere. And then one turning against the other. Come on. It's slightly on sideways, so it's never a perfectly good fit. But that, I turn a little bit clockwise to release it. That, along with the sticking power of that stuff, is that held in place. So I got all warmed up doing the polishing business. It's always quite tiring. So I'm going to just look first of all into here, and you won't be able to see very well. I'll try to move you forward. It's become very difficult to lift you up from my tennis elbow problem. Again, the light isn't fantastic right this second, but so I'm just going to look in here and I'm going to make sure that wherever I see connectors, they're not right in the way of anything else, or there's nothing obviously hanging off or touching anything that shouldn't be. Since I've had to hold on to these here, whatchamacallits, lugs, and push everything around, so I'm just making sure first of all there's a separation between all of these lugs in different parts of the pot, which according to this there is, so there's no crossovers. Now, if that be true, then this should play. We'll find out now. I'll just do well, I'm not going to hear the strings because I haven't got them in, but let's just test the. Let's just turn everything up for a minute. Oops. Turn the amp up. That's interesting. That is very loud in the wonder why that is. What's going on? On its own, this is hugely loud. Balanced and quiet. Quiet. Difficult to know, or difficult to test further without strings on. Okay, so like I say, I don't have a means to push and pull these around too much. Is this correct? That looks correct. We've got grey and red. Green is the middle. Green should go to the jack plug, which it doesn't. Green goes to the input on the volume. What? Okay, let's just look at this again. Maybe they changed colour somewhere halfway down the tunnel. Okay, we have got two pickups, black and grey. Black goes to okay, this configuration, the black is going to the holy woly, wish I could see with light. The black is going to the middle lug. Okay, that's interesting. Black goes to the middle lug of the volume. So the hot from the pickup goes to the middle lug of each pot in this configuration. The output, okay, that's better. The output from the volume pot goes to the switch up here, but according to this, the green goes to the middle. The green goes to the middle, which doesn't make sense to me. The green should go to one of the top. Let's see what we've got here, this red thing. The red is the jack, and the red, oh maybe it is, I just can't see this thing through properly. Maybe it's just, it's all clogged up here. Maybe green is the bottom one and I just can't see it. Yes, I mean it is when you when you get down into this territory. Whoa, hello down there. If you can work out what's what. It couldn't possibly work if it was the other way around. So we have to have. We've got the green here. The green is bottom, red is middle. That's probably about right then. Thank goodness. But it doesn't explain why the imbalance of, or the difference in output, unless they are massively different. So we have, this works, the pots work opposite way from what I'd expect. So the pickup goes to the middle, the send to the selector, excuse me, the send to the selector goes from the number one lug. At the same time, we've got two wires. One goes to the capacitor, the tone pot, which is great, and we've got, so it's a different, it's kind of an opposite way round to what I do, but there, then here the grey goes back out and becomes the top position. So the top position of the switch is, as we predicted, the, what's it? It's really powerful. That's muted and half. What happens if we turn off the... No, that's just half and half, whatever goes on with this one. And then flip up to the top. That's what it is in both cases. It doesn't change. But this one changes massively. It's like it gives it a boost. It's quite a cool boost, but why would we do that? And why is it doing that? There's no, can't see any reason for it, other than the fact this is different from how I would wire it. I would wire the pickup into the lug number 1, the output from the pot being lug number 2 going back to the switch, and then from the switch out to the jack, which it's currently doing, but it's not in the opposite way round with the... Why is that like that? This, by the way, this may have been exactly how it played when I played it just the other day, or yesterday, because the bottom line is I haven't... There's things here that aren't even soldered. I'm afraid I'm going to have to fire up my soldering iron and give all of this a bit of a kind of reconnect through. I mean, I know Alex won't have, this won't be that person's work, but it's not working very good. I mean, this shouldn't cut the volume when we put the two together. That's I don't know if that's sort of what you usually get when you parallel or something, but that changes the tone altogether. It's like the middle position is running through. It's like the middle position is running through the same tone pot or something. Let's just change that more. Let's see if that's true. It is. In this middle switch, with the selector switch put to the middle, what's happening is this, for some reason, this bridge pickup is going through the neck pickup's tone. The bridge pickup is going through the neck pickup's tone. How does that even possibly happen? The output, according to this, is on number 1, and number 1 goes out to there, and it goes across. There's an earth across to, where's that going to? It's going to the top of the pot. Top of the pot, mate. Top of the pot. And that earth goes across to the earth on that pot. Bizarre, man. This is really weird. It isn't right. So I may be looking at a rewire here to make this, simplify this, because that's definitely what's happening. You can hear it. I don't know if there's, I'm trying to work out now whether there's one of these capacitors legs touching something that shouldn't be touching. I don't quite know how that would make any difference, but it's definitely, we have definitely got a situation where this thing is not doing what it should. Just out of interest, what are those 473 capacitors? I'm just trying to make sure there's no way that the earth leg of that is touching the hot leg of that. It's so small. Let's just try this and see if that's made any difference, because sometimes one of the things that's impossible to know is the effect that something has. You know, when something goes wrong in there, you can get the weirdest overall effects. That's not right. So in the middle, something wrong in this little configuration is causing that middle selection to the signal from the bridge pickup to act as if it's going through the neck pickup tone pot. And I don't know whether it's something that's grounding out on something else, something. Sometimes it even happens when something isn't grounded, like the pot itself isn't grounded. You get the weirdest of effects that I would totally struggle to describe why that thing is happening if the grounding isn't complete or it isn't working. So it's not, what I'm trying to say is there's a whole bunch of non-logicalness to what goes on. I'm just trying to get these things out of the way so I can be sure that there's no crossovers and things touching things. Push that away. You can always do a bit of pushing things away from things so that there's no hot connectors touching anything else. Yeah. And that's what you'd expect the neck to sound like, although it's a bit low powered. I can't quite work out. That's the tone working what I would consider to be backwards. I'm sorry, but yeah, it is. The tone is working. Okay, let me just. Yeah, okay. This is really interesting. The not only that, but the neck tone is working in reverse to how I'd expect it. So let's just see here. So the neck tone, we've got the signal going into the middle, and we've got the signal going into the middle. Yep, same as, and we've got that jumping across from. Something is definitely not right. It's very weird. It's like I said, it's one of these little problems that doesn't seem to bear any relation to what the result is that you're hearing, and so the logic doesn't apply. But what is applying is that like I said, the neck tone here is appears to work in reverse. So you turn it one way and it gets clearer. Turn it the other way, it gets thicker, and this one works the opposite way. And yet, judging by what we're seeing here, we've got the capacitor on the third lug from left if you're facing that way. Nothing on the first lug, which is the same there. We've got the hot from the lug number 1, which is weird anyway. Lug number. Oh, wait a minute. Come on, what's going on here? Yeah, no. Hold on. What the hell is going on? Lug number 1. Right. Red goes to middle. That's the jumper. There. Goes to middle. They both go to middle, but for some reason that pot is working backwards. The volumes are B's, the tones are A's, but they're working in reverse. The only real way, this is take my own advice here, the only thing I would recommend at this point is to basically rework this to a point that you know what the hell's going on, instead of trying to fix somebody else's setup. So what I know about this setup, what I know is that I know which pickup is which, right? So for example, I can stick on a bit of tape wherever I've put it, and I'm doing this because this is the one thing I messed up the last time I wired one. I can tell you that is the bridge pickup, okay, and consequently the other one is the neck. So what I would suggest is we take all of this off, shorten anything that we can shorten, or replace the ones that have been melted a bit. Don't even know if these pots are good, but the soldering is not good. And the worry for me is that I can't diagnose, like I said, once you get something behaving bizarrely because of something that you don't know, either it's not grounded properly or something hasn't, been, I mean, what you could try and do with this is just go through and heat up everything and re-ground everything. Oh, by the way, just out of a thought, maybe this is coming through from here. Okay, the blue thing here is the bridge. Couldn't see the bridge. Where's the bridge one coming from? Okay. Usually comes through the side of the body, but it's coming through the same hole as everything else. Yeah. So as I say, once we could go through and just solder everything. I have to say the behaviour. I'm going to go on a limb here. The behaviour of this feels to me like something isn't grounded properly. And what I've noticed in the past is when that happens, the problems you get as a result are just completely indecipherable. They don't seem to make any sense. So I'm going to try and get this to work without blowing all the wiring in the house. Yeah, it would be almost impossible to describe what's not working and why. But I can see, you know, this is all. The actual wiring to the pots is back to front from how I do it. Wow. I mean, in a sense, the tone. I think that I'm not sure the tone has to come out of either one of the volume pot lugs. I'm not sure if it's critical, but it goes across to the middle pot, which is right, and the right hand one is the capacitor, which is good. Like I said, the first thing that strikes me is that I wouldn't typically do it that way around. I would have the pickup goes to the first lug, and the send to the switch goes to the second lug, which goes out to the switch. And this is the opposite way around, first of all, and then we've got this strange switch over of how we've got loss of volume on the bridge pickup. Sorry, the neck pickup, loss of output. It sounds about only 2/3, if that, of the power of the bridge one, which is a bit weird. And then, when you switch the switch over into neck position, the two pickups run through the same tone knob backwards, and it works in reverse. So that's just completely doolally. Like I said, even if there's all kinds of things you can get wrong, if there's a little split in any of these little white center core wires, and a piece of the core touches the earth somewhere and you short circuit it, you can get all manner of weirdy effects going on. So honestly, this could be anything. So my feeling is I'm going to go with the easiest immediate solution, which would be just reconnect the earths, make sure everything is earthed properly. Then once I've done that, if that doesn't put it right, then I'm going to strip everything out and put it back the way that is dependable. And it's really hard for anybody, because I think I was saying in writing the ebook stuff last night that the problem with wiring is the first problem is if you come to it and you're in the dark, so you don't know how it works. Number one problem. The second thing then is you go on trying to find out somebody to tell you how it works. And if you go online, the first thing you find is hundreds upon thousands, if not millions, of diagrams, all claiming to do the same thing. So here's a wiring diagram for a Les Paul, right? And then the first thing you'll see is that the first 10 or 20 Les Paul wiring diagrams all disagree with each other. So you've got two problems now. First of all, you don't know how it works, so you're in the dark. The second one is not knowing how it works. You haven't got the clue how to decide which is the trustworthy, reliable, or useful starter diagram for you. So you're in an impossible situation. So what you tend to do is you still remember this sequence. Still not knowing how it works, you grab one of the diagrams you think is the best one, and you go and put it into practice, and something doesn't work. Now slice exactly what you're looking at there. You don't know how it works. You've grabbed a diagram that you don't know whether it's right or not, or you don't know why it's been wired the way it has. It might be somebody's little quirky adaptation or customization or whatever. So you don't know how it works still. You don't know if we've chosen a good diagram. You try to copy it and it doesn't work. So you doubly don't know why it's not working. Is it because it was crap in the first place? Is it because you've done it wrong? Is it because it's for a modification that you shouldn't have chosen? And so on and so on. So you're absolutely no further along. You haven't learned anything. All you do is you go back to square one and you try desperately to find another more reliable one, and you keep repeating the process. And I've been through that situation, or that sequence, a number of times myself. And what I did was I eventually went back to this really basic book that I bought some time back that had a bog standard Strat and a bog standard Telly and a bog standard SG and a bog standard Les Paul wiring or whatever. And I followed those, and I decided in the ebook I'm writing to make those the sort of base diagrams. And so what I would advise is, if you're like me and you're not that up on electrics, I'm putting the diagram in there so you don't have to search Google, and you just look at it and go, right, compared to that, this is, I would be able to look at it and say, as I am saying now, wow, those pickups go to the opposite lugs to my diagram. So immediately you've diverged, this wiring has diverged from the diagram there. Doesn't mean it won't work, because as I've said, there are several ways to make it work. If you're an electrician, you'll know why there are several ways. If you're not an electrician, which most of us aren't, you just need to know there are several ways it can work and the same effect can happen. But knowing that, so you're somebody who doesn't know how it works, but you do know intellectually that there are several ways it could work and that all of them will work, you still need one that you can revert this back to, and that's why that diagram will be there. So you can take it and say, there is no way, not being an expert, not knowing not knowing expertly how this works, how am I going to make this play? And you need something that basically you can strip this back and put it back together again the way this shows you. And that's the only point that you'll start learning, is to be able to start with a reliable thing and work from there and see the mistakes you've made on the reliable thing. In this case, I know enough only to know that an ungrounded something can sometimes result in the most bizarre and unexpected functions of the components, and I cannot for the life of me tell you why that's the case. I just know that it happens, and as a result, my suspicion would be, in the first place, to question the earthing, the grounding on these pots. That'd be my first kind of culprit, just because I know from experience, and the grounding just visually on these pots looks not very good. It looks like it's just been blobbed on and backed off, so it doesn't feel like it feels to me like it could well have missed making a good connection. Come on, get on there. Heat up, damn you. So I've taken what were sort of just great big circular blobs of solder, which may or may not have made a good connection, and I'm trying to, you can't really see this, but I'm now trying to, without melting anything, which is obviously the previous owner has seriously managed to melt everything, which is could be another sort of part of the problem here. I'm just going through everything that's grounded to the tops of pots, and I'm trying to press them down at the same time as softening the solder and getting it to really stick to the pot, so that we can convincingly say we've got an earth connection. Thankfully there's some little LEDs on this fella, so I can see some of what I'm doing. But okay, so that's that. And I can also see that, for example, the connection here that goes to the pickup live here has got hardly any solder on the joint at all. So I'm going to go back through all of those one by one as well. But right now, just working on these appear to be quite dry and claggy earth joints on top of this mass of gloop. It's difficult because the person has kind of squished together about 5 or 6 wires on top of the pot, and I'm worried as I don't want any of them to pop out and stop doing what they're supposed to be doing. Right, now this is sort of a trial and error method, right? So I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to attempt to see if any of it improves as we go, because there's no point carrying on if we make the improvement. Right, that's full volume, bridge, treble open. We'll go full volume, treble, supposed to be open on the neck, reduced volume, and it's working still back to front, and the middle is both reduced volume and in fact this is both routed somehow, both routed still through the neck tone, which is clearly a problem. So that's not solved that, but it's a good start. Let's get a bit of solder. If I don't get this in an easy tweak like this, then I will strip it all out, which is a little bit disappointing, I have to say, because this is not what I expected to have to do at the price I paid for this second-hand guitar. But there you go. I guess, you know, it's what I get to do. I get to make it perfect for someone else. Right, this isn't going to solve anything exactly, but I'm just going to make this solder connection on the live out to the switch a good solder connection. Okay, again that's not really going to solve it. That's connected, that's connected, that's connected, that appears to be connected in the middle where it should be. We've got a good couple of wires in here that have been singed through by a bit of heavy handed work. Ow, damn it. What I'm trying to find out here is if any of these things are shorting, because remember I had that momentary out when I was playing it, which could be telling me something as well. Okay, nothing obvious there. This one here appears to be joined. That one's pointing back a bit. There's a bit extra wire sticking out there. I mean, a bit of hangover. I don't see how that could be affecting anything, but I always cut off the sticky out excess. Of course, the other thing, damn it, you know something, this is, well, okay, I'm just going to keep on looking for a minute. There's another thing that I often overlook to my cost, and actually it's something I really shouldn't overlook, and that is this can be a culprit. If there's some sort of I don't know what the word would be, grounding earth out, you know, something touching and grounding out inside this jack plate, if they're in the wrong place, the weirdest things can happen. In fact, even having the jack wires connected back to front can produce the bizarrest of results. So I'm going to start, and that's hidden, you'd never see that damn thing, and I've so often done everything else and then in the last minute gone, hang on a minute, and in some cases I've wired it the wrong way around and it's been working up to a point, but with everything going a bit weird. So I need to, there's a good reminder to myself, check this bloody thing, because it's the only bit that's hidden, that solder joint there. Now we've got a little stripped screw here which isn't doing anything, so we might put some, what do you call that stuff, no more nails in there afterwards, give it a bit of grip. Or better yet, push in a little bit of metal putty to give it something to work on. But I'm just going to take this off. Yeah, but that's the amazing thing, something is crossing out in here. This could be where it's all going bums up. Okay, so here's our thing. It looks good, looks pro. We have the white one is the tip, that's the hot one, and the other one thingy, and that goes all the way out to here, and the white one is the tip, and the other one goes to the earth, which as far as I can see is earthed on the side of this switch, but who knows how well it's earthed on the side of that switch, I can't tell you. But yeah, that's connected okay, but let's just with it out, let's just make absolutely sure of that, so we can just hoik that out, and if there's something iffy about it, we might find low output, low output. Okay, I'm going to put a hot one here, come back in a minute. Well, miraculously it's all gone dark and it's a lot later, and that's because I've had to rewire this beastie. Yeah, there we go. Enough said. Now I'm going to restring it because it's been a long day of I've been doing that rewiring plus a bit more besides, doing that black thingy Les Paul copy which had a 40 pot, so I've now cured that. I've made massive output on that thing, and it's absolutely hot pickups. Anyway, so what I'm about to do is I'm just going to restring this girl, and having done all the setup work, what seemed like hours ago, time to string her and get the string stretched, and away we go. Before I put these strings on, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to oil the fingerboard, and yeah, that's about it really. Everything else is good. Yes, it was a funny one, that. I just I redid it according to familiar wiring diagram basically, because I couldn't diagnose what had gone wrong with a non-standard wiring job, and for all I know it could have been something shorting somewhere which I couldn't see, so I took it all apart and gave it all a good rewire. Now what I've got back is the correct functioning of all the pickups, but I still think the neck pickup feels or sounds like it's a lot less output than the bridge, which is quite common in some cases. Although I didn't, while I was at it, I was too busy rewiring it to bother measuring the output, which I could do some other time, but not today, frankly. There's my spare nines going up there. Yeah, so anyway, I'm going to play it. I mean, it felt okay, or sounded okay to play yesterday, but it was just that detail of discovering that the both on position was really controlling, not only controlling both pickups with the single, it actually dampened the tone and the output of the middle one, sorry, the bridge one, but it also ran them both through the same tone pot, but also made it run backwards to the other one, which is definitely contrary to the normal direction the pot goes for opening and closing the tone. But hey, who knows? But anyway, like I said, it's too much trouble when it's all based around a wiring system that isn't the one you've chosen to do. So anyway, here we are back on track, and we've got this beautiful action now ready to put under load with some strings and get it going, and then I'm going to be more or less done for the night, because seems like I've been doing this now for ages. I'm going to just put these, getting warm from the soldering iron there, I'm just going to put these little what's that thing, neck truss rod cover on. Should be very nice, this action, given what we've done. The simple principles of levelling it apply the same to... And actually, just reminded me of something. I was going to say the principles of levelling it, a Les Paul copy or a Les Paul shaped guitar apply. The same principles apply as to doing a Strat, which the one in my ebook is a Strat. But the principles apply. But people often say, what do you do with this fall away or drop off? I can't remember what it's called. Fall off, fall away, where quite a lot of people, luthiers, so it seems, make adjustments or tend to kind of level all the frets from the 12th onwards in a downward sort of slope to ensure that, well, supposedly I believe it's to counter the humpedness of the glued Les Paul neck in the area of the body, because it's something I've noticed myself in actual practice, that where a neck on a Les Paul joins the body, it gets held very, very solidly. First of all, because it's glued, and secondly because it's up against a wall of mahogany or hardwood or whatever it is. But so consequently, that whole part of the neck from fret probably 13ish onwards actually can't flex very well, which makes making adjustments with a truss rod a bit problematic, because if you think about it, what you tend to get is a flexible first 2/3 of the neck and then an inflexible last third, which, if you think about it from a curved perspective, is really problematical, because it adds a hump to your otherwise smooth curve. And if you're trying to level a load of frets on a single nice smooth curve and they hit a plateau 2/3 of the way along, then what you're in danger of having, well, what you will get is a load of frets getting in the way of all the other frets. So consequently, I discovered somewhere along the line that's why luthiers, guitar techs tend to, or seem to, use this approach called falling off or dropping off or killing off or something, I don't know. Anyway, and I can sort of see the logic of it, but by the same token, you might as well sort of imagine that you're dropping off from the very first fret. Why wait for why try and do it at the 13th onwards? And actually, when I think about the geometry of this thing, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, full stop. Anyway, people ask me, do I bother doing it, or how does it work with the banana fret leveling method, or the curved loaded neck method, fully strung method? And interestingly, I've never done a fall away on a guitar, a Les Paul guitar, in my life. So first of all, I never did when I was fret leveling before, and I didn't seem to have a problem. Although I have to say, I probably had more problems getting a good action right at the top end. So I recognise there is an issue, because I could see the lack of flexibility and responsiveness of the neck on a Les Paul. But as soon as I started doing the banana method, I didn't have any problems, and I think it's because the banana method basically cuts, instead of just overkill and making a ski slope from the 13th fret onwards, which is a pretty defeatist way of saying, look, I'm going to make sure nothing gets in the way here by grinding everything away until there's almost no, by logical extension, if this carried on a few more frets, there'd be no fret material left, because I'm going to make sure every subsequent fret is lower than the one before it. That's one way of doing it. But with the banana approach, I found that it doesn't need that at all. And I suppose I was going to draw this briefly. What we got is, we got the sort of nice curve, and then we got this plateau where from about this point onwards, this is extreme obviously, but what you get here is the neck not only thickens up, but then it goes into this sort of wall of glued against the wall of the guitar, the body of the guitar, so it doesn't bend. And so what luthiers seem to do is they seem to kind of, from what I can understand, is from this point onwards they kind of grind backwards to make sure no frets get in the way. But to be honest, that still doesn't really cure this hump sitting in the middle of what you need otherwise to be a nice curve. So what's interesting is with the banana method, Let's imagine we still do have this curve and then a slight plateau. And let's say along that you have a series of frets badly drawn, and then they kind of peak there a little bit. What I found is with the banana method is it kind of does this. Sorry, it's a really crap version, but can you see where the important bit is here? Is so that it kind of cuts into the frets. It sort of removes the obstruction of this part here, and it's so small, it's so minor. I mean, those are exaggerated pictures, but it's so minor that that curve beautifully takes into account. Now you might find that it regularly on a ski sloped necked Les Paul, you might find that the banana method allows you to have some relief, acknowledges or kind of overcomes this hump effect by gently imposing its gentle overall curve onto it. And that's what I seem to find happens. Of course, I suppose another way of doing it is to take out the curvature altogether, but then you're going to find the frets hitting the deck very quickly and limiting the action you can have. So without getting too scientific, because I can't, it's just experience based. Like I said, I have to tell you that I haven't found a problem. Okay, so strings are on, and here's one of the most important bits of the whole process after having rewired your guitar so it plays using the right knobs and whatnot. It's going across all the strings, stretching the hell out of them. I'm using the sort of finger and thumb method. Somebody asked me on YouTube the other day for a link or a reference to the plastic string stretcher that I had, or I bought and I used on a couple of videos, and I stopped using it because there wasn't enough feel for my liking, and I found myself breaking too many strings. Now I still break strings doing this, as you will do if you stretch strings with quite a lot of force. Thank you. Oh, I'm turning the wrong one. Still getting warmed from that soldering iron. The reason I can't turn it off is that I have to turn all the lights off to switch it off, otherwise I blow the shed. Just too much load. Okay, so what I'm just doing now, here's the bit we can have a sneaky feel. This is that is the lowest action you're ever going to see. Oh, it's mental actually. Okay, going to now re-stretch again, and what you're going to find obviously is that it puts the strings right out of tune, and the reality is you've got to do this as many times as it takes to stop losing tuning or stop it detuning, and if that's 4 times, then do it, because after that you can play and the guitar will stay in tune. After this, there's 2 more things I'm going to do. One is that I'm going to intonate each string using a tuner and a screwdriver, and the other thing I'm going to do is, while I'm doing all of that, is I'm going to listen for, see how detuned it's got, I'm going to listen out for pings in the nut slots. I'm listening out for that all the time. Blimey, I might be putting my Rally up for sale. If this sounds anywhere near as good as it currently plays, it's got quite an extraordinary action on it currently. I'm not 100% sure about these pickups and the balance between them at the moment. Not sure if it's the way I'd like it, but it's what we've got, and it seems to have come with this setup. I thought it might have been to do with the wiring to beginning, but having rewired it, it still has what appears to be a bit of a lower output. It's not too far away, but maybe a little bit more of a lift. But okay, so we're back to the, oh yeah, I've got to put some knobs on. These are all obviously blue Loctited into place, and I'm just aiming to get them all the zeros sort of roughly pointing in the same direction. It's never 100% accurate, but we can sort of try for some consistency. There we go. Knobs on. Okay, so we'll go back and do another mega stretch, and this time I'm also trying to stretch a bit out of these bits here because there's still slack built up around the peg, and we're going to need to bend and stretch that out as much as we can. Everything else now on this is good. Shouldn't have to do anything else. We've got frets are a lot less sharp. There you go, that's what happens. Told you. Thankfully, each pack comes with a spare set, which this one gets used straight off. Come back straight into action. Sometimes I've even seen the strings occasionally undo at this end under tension. It's quite amazing that sometimes the strings undo at the ball end. I don't know what actually causes that, but it happens. Also keeping an eye out, because it could be that the saddle is a little bit sharp. Sometimes that can be the thing that causes breakages on some guitars. But doubt it, but it is a possible. Get that up on the saddle. There we go. And this one has a bit of lag compared to the other ones. The steel ones, the steel strings can often get deslacked quite a lot quicker than the others. Let's have some sound. Come on. Let's see if this plays at all. Interesting. That's bizarre. Oh well. How weird is that? Annoyance having just gone through the hassle. Let's just quickly check. There's something I've obviously left off. What I don't like on these guitars is I never like these Demasios with their braided wire, because the braided wire, well, it's not their fault, but the braided wire gets used as an earth wire. That's not making a connection at all. Onto there. That's across to there. Across to the tone in the middle slot. Oh, that's bizarre. It's working a minute ago. I think it was anyway. Yeah, this one, I'm thinking of the other one I was working on. This one has rubberized rubber wires from the pickups. I don't like the braided wire from the old DiMarzio's, just because it, as it gets used as an earth or ground wire, it can often touch other things and short out things. And this one is not. Weird. Neck pickup. Okay, the bridge pickup's fine. So there's something not right with the neck. Why is that? Right, girth on the top. Okay, I think that might have been. Okay, something wrong with that connector there. Looks alright to me. What's that one? Is that one touching the wrong thing? That's sticking out. What have we got? We've got. Oh, hang on a minute. What's going on? What's going on in there? We've got going out to the switch in a very weird kind of way. Okay. Okay. I think it's a connection here. I'm just going to, let's see what I'm going to do. I'm going to just luckily I've got my can't switch off soldering iron still going. Just going to pull things just out of the way. Not enough room to work. Won't be a minute. Hopefully this will be a quick check the connections, the joints. You can see how much I enjoy electrics. I'm determined. I mean, the nice thing about it is I'm determined to overcome my. Oh, now you're working. Overcome my fear of them, to make sure that I can get them working the way they should. Damn it. Right, got my soldering iron here, got my solder here, I've got my little. So that one's in the middle. Is that the middle one? Yeah. Okay, end one there, middle one there. Okay, that was what was, I think, slightly intermittent beforehand. I'm conscious that it might be, if it is the pot, then I need to replace it. So just bear with me a second. I'm just going to try and. It always makes a noise if you solder while you've actually got the thing plugged in. Okay, that one's lined that one up there. And we've got two connected to here. And if it is a dodgy pot, then I will get rid of it. Let's just have a quick feel. Ah, hang on, that's working. So maybe that fixed that. That's good. The balance of the volume's about the same now as well. Okay, let's just take these off for the time being. Put everything back in there. I'm going to keep it as is for a minute. And now I'm going to concentrate on tuning it and stretching. So back on track, sorry about that. nice nut slots. No pinging. Gone again. Well, I'm not going to take everything out. It's really annoying. Okay, well, this could go on forever. You know that. So I'm doing my best to take care of it as quickly as possible, and then I will, if necessary, I will put it on hold and save you the misery. Now I want to get in onto this one joint down here. Failing that, I'll dig out another pot and we'll have another go with a different pot. Still need brighter. No, it's the pot. The pot's dead. Just keeps, when you wiggle it, it keeps doing that. So that's a pain in the butt. I mean, I can sort of waggle it and get it to play. Wow. Earth. Onto the pot. How strange. Right. There's a grounding problem as well by the feel of it. Methinks. Just have a look at this little bit here. Let's ground that. Let's put that back on there. Get on there and stay on there. Mini pots down in recesses in bodies. Not a fun start point for anybody. So a pot that opens up and strangles the sound at full tilt. Some clever electronics person would know why that is. But for the life of me, I can't tell you. I mean, is it the capacitor that's knackered, or is it the pot that's knackered? It's getting expensive changing pots on these things, but great. Knob comes off. Yeah, it's a knackered pot. That's what we've got. Damn. I have to take it out. Okay, I'm going to stop this and take it out and change it out for another one. See you in a bit.